right, we're catching up with Bohemia Interactive here, creators of perhaps the most hardcore military experience out there. Of course, Arma 3 is already sort of out there in an alpha edition. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and what that sort of brought to the table for you guys as developers?
Yeah, I mean, it was, for our company, one of the first times we'd done something like a public alpha, releasing the game before it was completely finished. But I think the experience itself has been really, really beneficial. I guess I should start by saying a big thanks to our fans and community for taking part, taking the chance with us and jumping into the alpha. We've been happy to sort of receive their feedback, make some changes based on it. Really happy to see a lot of the mods that are already being made and the missions. So moving on now into the beta, we feel it's like a really solid platform. We've learned a lot from it. There's a lot more we can do, and that's what the beta is about.
So, because I can imagine it's a little bit scary proposition to sort of ask someone to buy the full game, and then you're letting them into an experience that's not what they're quite used to. But sort of, what is it that you sort of pinpointed now that you feel you need to work harder on to move the game and the project along?
Well, I think the alpha taught us something about the diversity of hardware that's out there. We'll never be able to really focus on all of the different combinations of CPUs, GPUs and whatnot, but it gives us some information about maybe where we can focus. Optimization is a big thing that people will ask us about, and our answer is it's always ongoing. You mentioned, giving people access to the game before it's finished. There's always a little bit of you that sort of feels it'll be better, we just need to hold on a few more weeks, don't judge us. But really just getting it out there is a good experience and helps you focus on the game as a final product. When you're in development for a long time, you can sort of forget that people are going to play this. But then when you have an alpha coming out, it's like, okay guys, we need to maybe think about this a little more carefully, get the stuff done that we want to. So optimization is one of those things. Adding more content is definitely another. So again, moving on to beta, we're moving more towards what the game is really about, like combined arms warfare, big helicopters, tanks, that sort of thing.
Is that something that sort of, in terms of the content, has that the roadmap ahead with content, has that changed in any way based on the feedback you got from alpha, where there's specific type of missions or things that people wanted to get that you perhaps hadn't anticipated?
Perhaps not so much in terms of the missions. I think if you want a concrete example of it, we could talk about something called stream sniping. So obviously one of the big popular things to do is to get a Twitch channel, start showing your gameplay, like Wasteland guys. There's a lot of people that like to stream with that. That wasn't a development focus for us to begin with, to make it stream safe, so to hide little bits of the user information like his name, that sort of stuff. So when you have one of the guys watching it, they'll be able to find you and cause some grief. So one of the bits of feedback was to make this analysis, with more priority, and as part of the beta, we now have a whole bunch of plans to be able to make the game sort of more stable for those kind of guys. And I think that is definitely something that we hadn't thought about well enough. We've learned from how people play the game, and we make changes based on that. And that's the benefit of releasing a public build early.
I guess that's one of the things that just come in most recent years, the fact that people want to show off their game, they're streaming it, and that's actually a huge thing and an important thing for you as developers as well, to sort of get your game recognized by more people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even for us in our own way of showing off the game, last week we have a Twitch channel now, and we didn't have that at the start of the year. So now guys can go onto our channel. We had a couple of streams last week, the week before, showing off some of the beta content. So we sort of learn from the community and then present our game in the way that people like to see it nowadays, and sort of move forward with that, I guess.
So you mentioned combined arms a little bit, and how that's a new focus for you, or like a continued focus rather. How's that changed up the game, and sort of what kind of scale of this kind of thing can you expect?
Well, if we talk about our alpha as the infantry core, then we can talk about the beta as building on that platform with firepower and logistics. So when I say firepower, I'll mean like a helicopter gunship or an armored vehicle, or the AT and AA weapons. These really can unbalance sort of the game if I add one thing without another. So what we identified was a relatively modest but interesting subset of things like this light attack helicopter and this wheeled armored vehicle. And then we give the infantry guys some AT and AA weapons so they can combat that. So that's the firepower. And then when I say logistics, I mean like big transport helicopters, big transport trucks. So obviously one of the big things about Arma is the huge environments. So now we have a bit more interesting vehicles to get a whole squad around in. It'll make it very interesting to sort of also ambush these things. And when you have a bunch of what we call like sandbox assets like this, it just increases the gameplay, tenfold. Like when we just start with a few infantry vehicles and the basic weapons. Now we have sniper rifles, and then we have a transport truck. Well, there's a mission right there. Or now we have a helicopter and an AA gun. Well, there's another mission right there. So it's all about growing our content slowly enough so we can maintain the quality and stability, which I think really was at the heart of what we tried to achieve from the alpha. But also enough to give really cool gameplay and for mods to be able to expand a bit bigger scale. And yeah, I guess that's where we are right now.
So you mentioned mods, and certain mods have the tendency to snowball out of control.
Yeah, a couple behind you.
Yeah. So what is there any mod in particular that has impressed you so far? It's still early days, of course, but something that you perhaps would like to give a shout out to?
Well, I guess the one that has the most sort of attention or has been the most popular would be Wasteland. I know some of the developers go on sort of every week and they see what the current state is. I mean, we're such an open platform, there's already a huge variety of missions, so I would hate to sort of give a shout out to one when there are so many. So it's definitely a big thanks to everyone for contributing. And I guess it also says something about the kind of gameplay people want to have. Like the more traditional Arma 2 players, that they wouldn't so much like the survival element of the Wasteland, whereas it brings in a whole different bunch of people that do like that sort of thing. And again, not giving sort of too much praise to one or the other, it's great to see all of them flourishing. And yeah, like the first mod I played with, or the first one I saw was adding the M4 back into the game, and it was just that was the first thing they did, and it was great. It worked, and it was exciting, but also kind of scary because you have an alpha game and then an alpha of a mod, and then somehow it's working. But what we hope for the beta is things get even more stable, and when we come to release, there'll be some really, really cool, for every different kind of player out there that is just straight out the box, you can play, you can download.
So speaking of release, obviously the beta is pretty soon, but how's the roadmap ahead? Do you have a date in mind already, or is that going to be sort of depending on certain factors?
Well, in terms of the beta, we're looking at the end of June. People that have the alpha obviously already will automatically get access to the beta and the release. So if you're in part of the dev branch, which is where people can join the more experimental build, they'll see in maybe a week's time at the earliest, maybe 2 weeks, already some of our beta content being preloaded and tested. But then the full release for the stable branch, as we call it, would be at the end of June. Looking further ahead, we're still saying Q3 for our full release, and we're on track with that. The alpha has gone well. We're a small team and there's a lot to do, but we seem to be on the right path.
So is next gen console something you might consider for the game, or are you sort of happy on PC?
Well, there's a whole bunch of really exciting stuff obviously going on at E3 now with Xbox One, PS4, even the hardware like the Oculus Rift. Like, we look at all of these things, we're excited by all of them, but for release we just need to concentrate on PC platform, getting it done as well as we can, stability, optimization, good gameplay. Like, that's where we are now, and that's where we want to be in Q3.
Thank you very much for your time.
Cool, thank you very much indeed.